Part 3. Achieving more. A man who chases two rabbits catches neither. Chinese proverb: don't know what you want. Improve these 7 universal skills. What does success look like? What do you want from life? What career do you want? Most of us answer, I don't know. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. And yet, we think it's the worst thing in the world if you don't know what you want to do. In life, we say, OMG, I don't know what I want. And then we have a full-on panic attack. Be honest. It happens to all of us. Especially when you see that your old college friend just got married, or that your coworker, who started at the same time as you, just got promoted. It's at those moments of weakness when we shine a spotlight on our own uncertainty about life. One of the biggest thinking errors that I've made was that I thought I needed to know what I exactly wanted to do with my life. The truth is that no one knows what they truly want, except the uncertainty. You could get killed by a cow tomorrow, really happened. You could lose half of your money on the stock market. Your property could go up in flames. I don't have to tell you all those things, but we must realize that we don't have the answers to most things in life. Will you stay healthy? Will the stock market crash? Will your business continue to prosper? No one knows. That's the beauty of life. Eleanor Roosevelt said it best. If life were predictable, it would cease to be life, and be without flavor. Some people ask me, why do you read so many books? There's no way you can apply everything you learn. They are right. I cannot. Why do I still read about all kinds of different topics? There might come a time in my life where I will need one particular piece of knowledge. And that one time I need it might just change the whole outcome of my life. I'll give you an example. In 2015, after my friends and mentors told me I should share my ideas about productivity, life, and business with others, I seriously started thinking about doing it. But there are many ways you can share your knowledge with others. You can give training to groups and host seminars. You can coach people individually. You can create videos for YouTube. You can give talks at conferences. The possibilities are endless. But, because I've always had an interest in writing and had read so much about it in the past, I realized that I should start with written ideas. That was the easiest way for me to get started. I had also learned all about creating websites in the past, so it was very easy for me to get started with all of this. In fact, I created a website in a day, and I started writing every day for a month. The result, a book and a bunch of articles. Know your direction, not your destination. When I read about writing and building websites years ago, I didn't know I would use that knowledge to build my own blog. To be honest, I didn't know what I wanted. I only knew what direction I wanted to go in. I knew I wanted to make a contribution and do work that I enjoyed. So it's not important to know exactly what you want to do with your life. People change. Economies change. So, it's not even realistic to boldly claim, I know what I want. The only thing every person needs is a sense of direction. A vision of where you'd like to go. Look, you don't need to know your exact destination. You often read about people who say they always knew what they wanted. But that's just a small portion of the population. I've personally never met someone like that. Most of us don't have that conviction from day one. It grows over time. If you can't decide what direction you want to go in life, that's automatically your number one goal in life, to figure out where you want to go. That's what J. Abraham also recommends in Getting Everything You Can Out of All You've Got, which is one of my favorite business books of all time. Your first priority is to identify what you want and then make sure you take the path that's going to give you that. There's nothing sadder than to see someone get to be 75 or 80 years old and look back regrettably because they pursued the wrong target. You see that he doesn't say you should know exactly what you want. That would not be realistic. Instead, we need to know where we're roughly going. I know, it remains intangible, but that's the only helpful answer that I've found in life. Work on universal skills. While you're figuring everything out, don't waste your time watching hours of TV, drinking booze, or eating junk food. Spend your time usefully. Learn skills you can always rely on. Need some inspiration? Here are a few skills that I'm constantly working on. 1. Self-discipline. Get better at ignoring the negative voice in your head. Get out of your bed. Go to the gym. Don't listen to, I don't want to. 2. Personal effectiveness. Learn how to maximize the results you can get during the 16 to 18 hours you're awake. Get more done, effectively. 3. Communication. We think we're all master communicators. But the truth is that we suck. Communication is both art and science. And our ability to work with others depends on it. 4. Negotiation. You negotiate all the time. With your spouse, kids, parents, teachers, friends, coworkers, managers, etc. Learn to get the best deal for all parties. 5. Persuasion. Learn how to get what you want in an ethical way. 6. Physical strength and stamina. Getting stronger is a skill. Pull your own weight. It's something every human should be able to do. 7. Flexibility. Sitting all day long behind your computer or in your car turns you into a stiff being. Learn how to stretch your hips, lower back, hamstrings, and calves, the most common weak points of desk workers. That's enough to keep you busy for a lifetime if you want to do it well. Pick a skill that excites you. Get better at it. Then, pick another. And keep on repeating that process. Soon enough, you'll know what you want. And if you don't, it's not the end of the world. There's still plenty to learn. Leave the office on time and don't take your work home. These 2 lessons are true for every person who wants a long, happy, and satisfying career. But it's very hard to put that advice into practice. It took me the first 6 years of my career to figure that out. And I still have to remind myself that life is bigger than work. Almost everywhere that I've worked in the past, there was a perception is reality, culture. That means looks are more important than reality. In other words, the person who's in the office the longest appears to be the hardest worker. Now, that may be true, but that's not what matters. We all know that the only thing that counts is results. However, we collectively insist on looking at vanity factors like participation in meetings, hours spent at the office, and how fast people respond to emails. It's pathetic. At our family business, we encourage everyone to leave when they are done for the day. We've learned that focusing on priorities is a much better metric than only looking at the hours someone works. And still, people find it uncomfortable to say, I've finished my top priorities, I'm going home. I get it. When you work in a group, you don't want to make others feel bad or that things are unfair. But think about why you're working in the first place. You're there to contribute to your own company, or the company you work for. Working too long is unproductive. Now, I'm sure people love to be in your presence for 10 hours a day, but that doesn't mean you have to stick around so long that you become unproductive. Because that's one of the main reasons we've stopped working standard 9 or 10-hour days. It's useless. There's a large body of research that proves working long hours is counterproductive. Working too much and the stress that goes along with it can lead to depression, sleep problems, impaired memory, and even heart disease. You get the idea. That's why my first rule of work is this: leave on time. The other day I was talking to my mentor about how great it is to love your job. He said, I've never had a job in my life that I didn't love. It's one of the most gratifying things in life. But like my mother always says, too much of a good thing becomes bad. I believe that's the same with work. Now, I'm not talking about intensity. Don't get me wrong. I work my ass off. Always have done. But just don't go on for too long. The art of working hard is knowing when to quit. But like my mentor told me, that's very hard. My biggest problem was that I worked too much. I left the house at 7 a.m. and came back at 11 p.m. That's too much. You must protect yourself against too much work. And it's straightforward. Just leave the office on time. Whether you love your job or not, it doesn't matter. When it's time to go home, go. No one needs you to be at the office 24/7. Only your ego does. Honestly, the office will be here tomorrow. Your coworkers will still be alive. Your company will not go bust. Work is about achieving results. If you can't do that in 6 to 8 hours a day, you're not effective. So instead of working overtime, read a book on personal effectiveness or get productivity training. Leave your work at work. But don't just go home and bring your work with you. That defeats the whole purpose. No one thinks it's cool when you're closing deals on the phone at dinner. You're also not doing yourself a service by continually thinking about work when you're at home. Relax a bit. Play some Call of Duty. Cook dinner for your spouse. Take the kids for a walk. Whatever. Look, living a happy life is very simple. It's all within our control. We can decide what makes us happy. I have printed this Marcus Aurelius quote on my journal too. Remind me of that. Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. We all know that money, success, fame, or recognition, by themselves, don't make us happy. And yet, we work too much to obtain those things that don't even make us happy in the first place. So why do we keep working too much that it hurts us? It could be our ego. Maybe we just can't help ourselves. It's different for every person. Personally, I don't care about the reason. All I know is that too much work has a negative impact on the quality of your life and work. What matters is that we protect ourselves from our own stupidity. We're just like kids. We need rules to live happily and safely. That's why the first rule of work is that we leave the office on time. The second rule is that we don't take our work home. And the third rule, let's not worry about that for now. We'll get to that another time. It's time for me to go home. Consistency is key. Improve by 0.1% every day. Do you ever worry about things you don't control? If you do, join the club. It happens to all of us. But worrying is a waste of time and energy. Imagine the following situation. You make a mistake at work that upsets a client. Maybe you send someone a wrong email. Maybe you forget to solve a problem. It doesn't matter what it is. Imagine that something goes seriously wrong at work. What do you do when you find out? Do you stress out? Feel uncomfortable? Blame yourself? Blame others? Think it's the end of your career? When things go wrong, we become our own worst enemy because we focus on things we don't control. It's one thing to read about these things. It's another thing to actually put it in practice. Because when shit hits the fan, it's natural to panic. Instead of thinking, take a step back and focus on what lies within your control. What do you control? Essentially, we only control our own actions and mindset. We determine our desire, attitude, judgments, determination. That's about it. Anything else, we have no control over. So it makes no sense to worry about things that are not on that list. That's a Stoic philosophy exercise. Something that exists for centuries. And the best thing is that you can immediately apply this to your life. Next time you catch yourself worrying about a situation, focus on the things you control. What counts is that we do the right thing because that is all we can do. We don't control outcomes. Do you see? 1. Made a mistake. Correct it. 2. Something goes wrong. Find a solution. Also, never be surprised when bad things happen, but rather expect them to happen. In that way, you will never be caught off guard. Similarly, when you're struck with bad luck, don't complain and say stuff like, "Why me?" Instead, accept it, and then focus your energy on finding a solution. Always keep a positive mindset. Why this exercise improves productivity. I'm often asked, what does philosophy have to do with productivity? Well, if you want to be productive, the most important thing is consistency. Productivity is not about eureka moments, your big break, pulling off all-nighters, or drinking Red Bull all day. If you want to achieve things in your life, it's about aiming for daily progress. You want to exercise, read, work, learn, study, every single day. Inconsistency is the enemy of results. And that's why I practice Stoic and pragmatism philosophy to improve my mental toughness. It's also a big part of my personal productivity system, procrastinate zero. I don't want ups and downs because that hurts productivity. Instead, I want to progress 0.1% every day of the year. And that's a very realistic goal. Try it and maybe it will change your life too. Who says you have to get out of your comfort zone? I love my comfort zone. To me, that's where the real magic happens. In my comfort zone, I have my family, friends, work, music, books, movies, bike, gym, park, you name it. Everything I love. And from that place of safety, I'm more open to trying new things and take risks. I've never believed the idea of that stupid little drawing. You know what I'm talking about, right? Your comfort zone. A little circle, where the magic happens. A big circle that stands for the promise of success. As if magic only happens when you step outside your comfort zone. That's ridiculous. And while we're at it, why pretend as if your comfort zone is bad? It's this pathetic little circle displayed against the bigger, magical circle. Sure, I'm all about pushing yourself, trying new things, moving forward, growing, etc. But in contrast to many popular self-help people, I don't believe the comfort zone is a bad thing. Call me a pessimist, call me stoic, but more than anything, I'm merely a practical person. And practically speaking, you don't even want to make a huge leap outside your comfort zone. In fact, I believe in the slow road to magic. Where's the magic people talk about? I've found that I do my best work when I don't worry about money, finding new friends, getting familiar with a new environment, and anything else that is related to always moving around. But don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I prefer to stay put. Stagnation is a death sentence for me. I believe that there are different phases of life. Sometimes, you take it easy, work on your skills, your character, you invest in yourself. And sometimes, you just go out there and take a chance. Life's too short to be a wimp. But those two things are interconnected. If you don't work on yourself, and if you lack self-confidence, you will never take a risk. For years I wanted to do what I'm doing now. But instead of jumping out of my comfort zone, which was scary, I slowly took on new and bigger challenges. First, I got 2 degrees in business. Then, I started a business together with my father. That was in 2010. And after 2 years of working on that business for 6 or 7 days a week, I started doing freelance marketing work. Again, after a few years of freelancing and starting and failing other businesses on my own, I took a job at a research advisory firm because I wanted to know how it is to work for a major corporation. And after doing that for a year and a half, I finally decided to write and talk about productivity, career, and entrepreneurship on the internet. By then, I'd been doing the things I write about for more than 10 years. And yet, I don't have all the answers, I just share the stuff I've learned. So it would be ridiculous if I would join people who scream, if you want to be successful, all you have to do is step outside your comfort zone. Now, well, have you ever stepped outside your comfort zone? Even just a little bit counts. And what did you find? A leprechaun with a bag of money. Not going to happen. That comfort zone shit is just a story. It might motivate some people, but you don't have to believe it if you don't want to. It's just like when people claim you have to wake up early if you want to be successful. Says who? I believe this. If you step outside your comfort zone, there's only more work waiting for you. It's not fancy at all. There's no magic involved. Just blood, sweat, and tears. Work your way up from a place of comfort. I think that most people who read these type of articles want to achieve something. Maybe you want to quit your job, start a business, grow your business, become an artist, publish a book, whatever. And you probably also know that it's not easy. So why do you make things even harder for yourself by doing shit that makes you very uncomfortable? Instead, start from the very bottom. Build a strong foundation. Get comfortable before you do scary stuff. How does that foundation look like? If you want to live stress-free, you need enough money in your savings account so you can live and eat for 6 months in case things go south. See it as a fail-safe system. Again, that's my practical mind speaking for me. Make some calculations and figure what that number is for you. And don't even think about taking a risk before you have that money on your savings account. Also, build a skill set that's worth something. One of the reasons I don't care about money is because I trust my ability to find work. Even when I go broke tomorrow, I'll find a way to get work the next day. I've invested years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in my education. The question is, what's your skill? How can you add value to the world? What problems can you solve? Other things that complete your foundation. 1. Family. If you don't have a family, create one. 2. Friends. You can't be friends with everyone. Stick to a few people who also stick to you. 3. Yourself. Consciously improve your body and mind. Go to bed a little stronger and wiser every night. Lastly, don't try to be something you're not. If you're an introvert, don't pretend that you can work in a boiler room. If you're an extrovert, don't pretend you can work in solitude. Stay close to yourself. There's no point in pushing yourself so badly that your life becomes miserable. In the end, we all need comfort. It's one of our basic needs as human beings. But we also need growth. So whatever you do, don't stay in your comfort zone for too long. Try to keep moving forward every day, even if it's just a tiny step. No magic, just effort. If you can believe it, you can achieve it. I know what you're thinking. This guy probably read a motivational quote on social media, and now he's telling us that nothing is impossible. Yeah, right. I think the world has no shortage of motivational articles, books, videos, or Facebook posts. You don't need a bigger dose of #Monday motivation. You know why? That type of motivation is not practical. It doesn't do anything. It's not useful. It's the same as drinking Red Bull. It fades quickly. Belief, on the other hand, is a tool that's extremely useful. And it's underutilized by many. The problem is that most of us lack belief. And when I talk about belief, I talk about it from a practical point of view. I'm not talking about hope or faith. I don't believe that you can hope for the best. Sit back and wait until good things happen to you. Hope is not a strategy for life. I prefer to look at facts and make conclusions like a pragmatist. Like it or not, but everything that's floating in that head of yours is there because you believe it. Life sucks. I'm not good at my job. I can never find my dream job. No one loves me. I will never become successful. See, it's all there because you believe those things. William James, one of the primary figures associated with pragmatism, put it best. Belief will help create the fact. Belief is a practical instrument that you can use to shape reality. Have you ever considered that you decide what you believe? Not your friends, colleagues, family, or even the media. You observe things, and then decide what you believe. That's why belief creates facts. No, life is not an R. Kelly song. You can't fly, no matter how hard you believe it. A pragmatist always keeps it real. You will never become a respectable leader without putting in the work. Your life will never change unless you take action. But that's not the point. You know this. There's no outcome without action. It comes down to one thing. Do you believe that you can, or can't live the life you want? It's as simple as that. But it's something that you truly have to believe. It's one thing to say that you believe something. It's a whole different thing to actually believe. Let me highlight that by sharing a personal story. For most of my life, I lived in fear. It all started at school. People told me, if you don't get good grades, you will not be accepted to a good university, and without a good degree, you will never get a job, and you will become a bum who dies alone. After hearing that, my 17-year-old brain went into a full-fledged panic mode. I started believing that stupid story. Who wants to become a bum and die alone? That's a metaphor for not believing in yourself. Because somehow, that's always the alternative. If you do something that's uncommon, or maybe a little risky, the common argument is that you become homeless. I meet a lot of people who say they've made important life decisions based on fear. Do you hate your job, but are you afraid to look for something else because you might lose your house? Do you want to leave your spouse, but are you afraid you'll die alone? Do you study yourself to death because you're afraid of what your parents will say when you quit? Do you never expose your work to the world because you're afraid people will throw rocks at you because you suck? Will that really happen, or is that just your mind acting up? Probably the latter. I always wanted to become a writer. Back in school, I wrote poems for my girlfriend. It was kind of pathetic, but hey, she enjoyed my weird poems. But all jokes aside, I loved to read and enjoyed putting my thoughts on paper. But no, every adult in my life was trying to scare me to death. You can't make a living as a writer. They were probably right. It's not easy to make a living by writing. So what? Everything that's worth it is hard. I didn't realize that back then. So I gave up my goal. I decided to pick the safe road and pursue a degree in business. I don't regret that decision because I've learned many useful things. But the whole experience turned me into a fearful creature. Because after that whole scarefest in school, I eventually stopped believing in myself. I stopped writing and reading. And that's a pure waste of time that I could have used for practicing my skills. You can achieve anything as long as you believe in it. What's something you once believed in but stopped believing because of fear? I think we've all been there. If you're not careful, you'll always stay there. For me, it wasn't until 2 or 3 years ago that I figured out belief as an instrument that can help you to achieve your goals. Somehow I started reading about pragmatism, which is a way of thinking. And it completely changed my own way of thinking. I realized that not believing in yourself is useless. So I decided to believe that I could live the life I wanted. Granted, I'm not fully paying the bills by writing yet. I run a business and do consulting. But I do make some money with my blog. And that's pretty good to know for the 17-year-old version of me. Believing in yourself is very simple. You can do it too. Just understand that belief is an instrument. That idea is not new or anything. It's been around for hundreds of years. People just have different names for it. I don't care how you call it. But guess what happened since I've been using belief as an instrument? Most things I believed are facts now. And the other stuff I believe will one day become a fact. How am I so certain? Because my mind can conceive it. And if your mind can conceive it, you can achieve it. That's not a motivational quote. That's a fact. Do you believe it? Don't compete. Create. If you think that you have to compete for better jobs or more market share, you're as wrong as I was. The idea of competition is engraved in our minds. We believe that we have to compete for the same jobs with others. If someone has a job, that means you can't have the same job. And if a company has a certain market share, that means you have to compete with that company to win a piece of their share. At least, that's what conventional advice says. It's also what I learned in business school. My entire education was based on competing with other businesses. And almost every business book that I've read also assumes that business is competition. They couldn't be more wrong. When you assume that you have to compete with other businesses or people for money, jobs or attention, you're engaged in limited thinking. Instead, we must adopt an abundance mindset. Wallace D. Wattles, one of the first famed personal development authors, said it best. You get rid of the thought of competition. You are to create, not to compete for what is already created. You do not have to take anything away from anyone. The biggest mistake that conventional business thinkers make is that they believe supply is limited. But that's not always the case. But even if it was the case, it's harmful to adopt that mindset. I think that most people, entrepreneurs and those who are employed, are afraid that someone else beats them to it. Right. We fear that we lose our clients, business, contracts, attention, and that we lose everything we worked so hard for as a result. But that's exactly the problem. Fear begets fear. When you're afraid that you won't be able to grow, what will happen? Exactly. You won't grow. Life is abundant. A quick look at history shows that mankind always kept moving forward. Sure, we've had times of war and economic downfall, but we always recovered and grew. So when you're expecting that the world economy will not grow, you're actually betting against mankind. I don't believe that. Humans always find a way to survive and prosper. That's simply what we do. You must believe that we live in an abundant world. There is enough opportunity and riches for everyone. So, never allow yourself to think that you won't make it. What is that good for? If you can't find the right career, create one. You know, life is not easy. And it's also not easy to find a career that truly satisfies you, both mentally and financially. I know that millions of people face that challenge. But I also know that many of these people limit themselves by thinking that they can't create a career. Similar to how I think entrepreneurs and companies should create market share, I also believe that individual people should create a career. I recently met a chief happiness officer at a non-tech company, which is pretty unusual. I did some research, and it appears that Ronald McDonald was the first who had the CHO title in 2003. After that, tech companies started adopting the title. It's very simple. A CHO is responsible for the wellness and happiness of employees. I also read that Tony Hsieh, CEO of Zappos, is a big advocate of employee happiness. But here's the thing. Traditional companies think it's bullshit. Initially, the company I mentioned before shared that thought. And naturally, they didn't have a CHO position. She told me she had to create the position. In the past, leaders believed that the only reason people will work for you is because of the salary. The more money you offer, the better the people you attract. That might be true for some. But more money is not always better. Many people care more about having fun at work, feeling appreciated, and being happy. And that's what the CHO does successfully. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter what others think. If you believe in something and if you can create value, go for it. There are always people who say things like, "No one needs this. Your work is garbage. You're wasting your time." Don't listen to the naysayers. Let them drown in their own limiting beliefs. Instead, do this. Create, create, create. There's enough opportunity for everyone in the world. The problem is that most people don't use the opportunities. If you want to have a specific career, go out there and create it. The same is true for your business. And don't focus on limited resources, naysayers, or any other reason you should not do it. Adopt an abundance mindset. Before you know it, you'll have so much opportunity that you don't know what to do with it. In the Netherlands, we call that a luxury problem. Believe me, it's the only problem that you want to have. All strength comes from repetition. The biggest mistake you can make is to ignore the basics of your profession. This is true, no matter what you do, where you live, or who you are. When you ignore the foundation of what makes you a good person, athlete, friend, entrepreneur, student, etc., you will never be consistent. That's the biggest lessons I've learned from studying athletes. People who play professional sports are under constant pressure to perform. Take Daniel Cormier, the current UFC light heavyweight champion and former Olympic wrestler. The 38-year-old champion has an impressive career until now. He won multiple gold medals as a wrestler. And in MMA, he has won 20 of his 22 fights in total. He's considered as one of the best. On top of that, he's also a combat sports analyst and co-host of UFC Tonight on Fox Sports. The man is highly active. What is his key to success, according to himself? Focusing on the basics. He says, "You don't get to the highest levels of the sport without having the basics in order." That's not only true for sports, it's also true for everything else in life. Writing, speaking, selling, leading, you name it. Without having the basics in order, you'll never achieve your full potential. Repeat the basics, and there's only one way to improve the basics, by repetition. You get stronger by lifting weights, representative after representative. You build stamina by performing anaerobic exercise. We all know that. But how about your mind? How do you become mentally stronger? And why does it even matter? The answer is simple. Everything starts with the mind. Stephen Pressfield, the author of The War of Art, said it best. Long term, we must begin to build our internal strengths. It isn't just skills like computer technology. It's the old-fashioned basics of self-reliance, self-motivation, self-reinforcement, self-discipline, self-command. But my challenge was always, how do you do that? I know how to get physically stronger, but I never knew how I could get mentally stronger. And whenever people told me, it's all about life experience, I always thought there was a better way. Let's be honest, who wants to wait until they are 70 to get mentally strong? Some things can be done faster, especially if you keep repeating the basics. Because that's when we screw up most of the time. We think we know everything. Stay a beginner. How often do you think to yourself, I already know that? If you're like most of us, quite often. One thing we have to remind ourselves is that the people who think they know everything are the biggest losers in life. I meet people all the time who think they know everything. And I don't even mention people on the internet. A lot of commenters always want to show how smart they are and that this is so obvious. Well, that's not how the greatest people in the world approach things. Muhammad Ali once said that it's the repetition of affirmations that leads to belief. And once that belief becomes a deep conviction, things begin to happen. When you repeat the basics, you don't only become great, you will stay great. It's a challenge that all high performers face. I repeat the basics of many things in my life. Fitness, philosophy, kindness, business, writing. For example, I reread my favorite books on Stoicism every month to exercise my mind. I regularly grab the elements of Style by Strunk and White to repeat the basics of simple and effective writing. If I don't repeat these things, I simply forget about my philosophy for life or how to write good articles. That's how our brain works. Without repetition, we forget things easily. I always look at myself as a beginner. That's one of the first and most important lessons I learned from my mentor. He's now in his 70s and still considers himself as a student of life. I have the same approach to business. I always go back to the question of, what is the purpose of a business? I can tell you that if you answer, to make money, you need to repeat the basics. It's very simple. Figure out what the basics are in your field and repeat them. Keep it simple. There's no bigger waste of time than repeating bad, wrong, or negative things. That's the only thing you should be mindful of. Don't take advice from people who haven't successfully done something themselves. Be great. Stay great. Look, you can be very smart, driven, humble, etc., but if you don't stay that way, what's it all worth? How often do you see people become successful only to squander their success? How many one-hit wonders have you seen? Exactly. Only the great ones are here to stay. And if you want to stay here too, you must never underestimate the power of repetition. Never think you've made it or that you're smart enough. Because that mindset is what keeps you great. How I measure my life. You can easily measure a business by looking at the numbers. Turnover, profit, costs, employee churn, etc. But how do you measure your life? There are no universal metrics to assess your life, so it's up to every person to create their own way to measure where they are in life. Some do that by looking at how much they earn compared to their peers. Some look at how far they climbed the corporate ladder. Others measure themselves by how they look. I have studied how the most successful thinkers of our time measure their lives. The answer is surprising. You rarely hear that successful people measure their life by the size of their bank account or any other conventional measure. Instead, people who are considered successful in the eye of society often look at these three factors. 1. Energy. 2. Work. 3. Relationships. I've experimented with improving all the three above things. What I've found is that they are all closely related. When I have high energy, I'm in a good mood, and when I'm in a good mood, I do better work. And when I do better work, I feel satisfied with my life, so I can give more to the people in my life. And that improves my relationships. And what's the secret to a good life? Good relationships. Clayton M. Christensen, a Harvard business school professor and author of How Will You Measure Your Life, writes, the single most important factor in our long-term happiness is the relationships we have with our family and close friends. When it comes to relationships, quality matters more than quantity. Though it's easy to pick on people who are influenced by social media, I still think it's worth saying, no one cares about how many followers or online friends you have. Real relationships take a long time to grow. And they are also unconditional. Most relationships are not real. We only love someone until they, for example, change their views or gain a few pounds. Or we only invite friends to our birthdays as long as they go out with you and drink beer. These types of conditional relationships are worthless. Real friendship and love are stronger than that. You support the people you love no matter what. That makes life rich. 1. Measuring energy. Measuring your energy is easy. All you have to do is look at how you feel physically. I recently wrote about that specifically. What matters is that you find ways to increase your energy. You can start by asking yourself one question: what small thing can I do today that has a significant impact on my energy? Here's something that is true for everyone. 1. Exercise every day. I lift weights 4 times a week, do 2 interval runs, and make sure I walk at least 30 minutes at a fast pace on the days I don't work out. 2. Eat well. I don't follow a specific diet. I eat meat, bread, pasta, and a bunch of other things that are supposed to be bad for you. But I feel great. I just don't eat processed stuff, and I eat very little sugar. I like chocolate. I also don't consume more calories than I burn. That's one part of the equation. When I do those 2 things every day, I feel great. And my energy is also high. As soon as I stop working out or start eating unhealthy, I feel down. That's how I know this works. You can easily improve your energy by exercising more and eating well. 2. Measuring work. When it comes to work, I don't look at income, status, or other generic measures. Instead, I look at how much I can still learn. In other words, have you reached your full learning potential? Why do I look at learning and not income? Because it matters more. Christensen puts it well in How Will You Measure Your Life? In order to really find happiness, you need to continue looking for opportunities that you believe are meaningful, in which you will be able to learn new things, to succeed, and be given more and more responsibility to shoulder. Career and life success is directly related to how much you learn. And more importantly, how much you keep learning. Education never ends. Also, income is directly related to your learning development. The more you learn, the more you earn. It's true. Of course, there are limits to this statement. And knowledge must always be put into practice. We've all heard about the smart people who've wasted their potential. To be successful, you must always act on what you know. Without action, knowledge is useless. But, generally speaking, the more knowledge you have from experience or studying, the more you can contribute to your company, colleagues, clients, etc.